it was always my mantra to make sure it kept control of the club.
Sir Alex Ferguson warned that football is not won by possession alone. Control to him was about moments. The instant the ball is won, the speed of the first pass, and the ruthlessness to strike before an opponent can reset. It was never about looking dominant, it was about being decisive.
And Company has been robbed by Nani, who's through to win it for Manchester United, and will, and does. Manchester United win the Community Shield.
Fast forward to today, and in one of the most pressurised fixtures in English football, Michael Carrick quietly brought that thinking back.
The boys delivered. Michael Carrick delivered. That is what Manchester United is supposed to look like.
Against a Pep Guardiola side built to suffocate opponents with control, Manchester United did something few teams dare to do. They refused the possession battle. City had the ball. United had the plan. Manchester City set up to dominate. Patient circulation, wide isolation and precision timing. Erling Haaland waited centrally. Jeremy Doku stretched the left. Antoine Semenyo looked to isolate on the right. The intention was clear. Draw United out, then strike. But Carrick flipped the script. United stayed compact. They waited, and the moment the ball turned over, they exploded forward. Multiple goals ruled out for offside. Repeated runs in behind. City's defensive line constantly exposed. Despite conceding possession, United created the sharper chances, and when it mattered, they finished the job.
Wow, what a performance from Man U. The game's still not done, just gone 2-0. This is the Man United of old.
This wasn't luck, it was structure. This wasn't nostalgia, it was calculation. What you're about to see is how Carrick fused modern organisation with classic Manchester United instincts. How a blueprint written decades ago was quietly used to dismantle the most dominant system in English football today. This is why this performance wasn't just a derby win, but a warning.
It's the best performance I've seen from a Manchester United team in a long, long time.
Before we can properly understand how Michael Carrick dismantled Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, we have to get something straight about Sir Alex Ferguson.
I think that if you're managing Manchester United for 27 years, and the important thing is it was always my mantra to make sure it kept control of the club.
Ferguson didn't build Manchester United to win the possession argument. He built United to win the game. And the numbers prove that what he believed wasn't theory. It was a system that dominated the Premier League for 2 decades. Under Ferguson in the Premier League era, Manchester United won 13 titles, and across 810 league matches he recorded 528 wins, 1,752 points and 1,627 goals, with a 65% plus win rate that remains the benchmark for sustained dominance. That is not the resume of a team that needed the ball to feel in control. That is the resume of a team that knew how to control the important parts of football, because Ferguson's version of control was not sterile possession. It was control of moments. The moment you win the ball, the moment you break pressure, the moment a defender turns, the moment a runner goes, beyond the moment an opponent loses shape for just 2 seconds. Those 2 seconds are where titles are won. Yes, Ferguson used a 4-4-2 as the base for much of his reign, but it was never a rigid textbook 4-4-2. It was a framework designed to adapt to the opponent and trigger transitions. In defensive phases, it could become compact banks of 4 forcing play wide, a mid-block that invited passes into predictable zones, or a higher press when United sensed weakness in build-up. Then the moment the ball turned over, and this is the key. The structure already had outlets preloaded, wide runners ready to burst, central forwards positioned to pin or spin, midfielders trained to play forward early. This is why Ferguson teams looked simple until you tried to play against them. They didn't need 20 passes to become dangerous, they needed 2.
Rooney again, it's Nani played in by Cleverley! Brilliant finish, wonderful goal!
People often confuse Ferguson teams with long ball football. That's lazy analysis. Ferguson's teams were early ball teams. There's a major difference. Long ball is hopeful, early ball is calculated. The Ferguson idea was to hit space before the opponent, sets their defensive structure. So the transition pattern looked like this. Regain, first pass forward or out of pressure, second pass into the runner or channel, third action equals final third damage, whether that's a shot, cross, cutback or set-piece win. That is how you punish a possession team, not by fighting them for the ball, but by attacking what their possession inevitably creates, space behind them. And that's why this story matters, because City are the modern kings of control. Ferguson mastered the best antidote. Another reason Ferguson's 4-4-2 stayed dangerous across eras, it was rarely symmetrical. Often you had one winger holding width to stretch the pitch, the other drifting inside to combine, overload and connect with the forwards, and fullbacks overlapping selectively depending on game state and opponent threat. So United could flood one side quickly, switch play instantly, or attack the half spaces without losing width. That balance is what made Ferguson transition football feel so ruthless. It wasn't chaos, it was organised speed. If you want to understand the Ferguson blueprint, stop thinking about midfield as a passing triangle. Ferguson built midfield for ball recovery, second ball dominance, and instant vertical progression. You usually had a dynamic where one midfielder anchored, hunted and protected the centre, another could pass long, switch play and arrive forward, while wide midfielders were expected to do the unglamorous work: recover, sprint, press, then counter. This is exactly why Ferguson teams could look calm even when they didn't have the ball. They trusted that regains would come, and when regains came, the attack was automatic. Modern possession teams often rely on centre-backs stepping in, midfielders receiving on the turn, and fullbacks pushing high to pin you back. Ferguson's 4-4-2 punished that because two forwards create constant structural stress. Centre-backs can't step out freely because there is always depth threat behind. The first forward can link, the second can spin, defenders must decide instantly. Transitions become shorter because you already have two central reference points. That's why 4-4-2, when coached properly, still hurts top teams. It compresses the pitch defensively, then stretches it violently in transition. The culture of late goals wasn't magic. It came from repeatable factors: high fitness standards, relentless tempo late in games, constant territorial pressure, and belief that the match never settles. And Ferguson's Premier League record backs that mentality. He didn't just win, he won for decades, and he did it with a ruthlessness that became identity. It's also why he collected a record 27 Premier League Manager of the Month awards, a reflection of constant performance across multiple generations of squads. And it wasn't just home dominance. Ferguson's United were elite away from Old Trafford, with 223 Premier League away wins, again a record. If Ferguson's success was only about one golden generation, you'd see dominance spike and then fade. But the Premier League's own statistical breakdown tells a different story. Under Ferguson, United won the most Premier League points in the 1990s, the 2000s, and even the 2010 to 2013 stretch leading into his retirement. That's not just greatness, that's adaptability, changing personnel, changing opponents, changing trends, and still winning because the principles survived every era. If you need one Premier League game that distills Ferguson's mentality and tactical insistence on tempo, it's the 5-3 comeback against Tottenham in September 2001, when United became the first team to win a Premier League match after being 3 goals down at half-time. That match didn't happen because United had more possession. It happened because the moment the second half started, the tempo changed, the directness increased, and the opponent couldn't survive the pressure. That is Ferguson football. Absorb, adjust, attack decisively, and finish. Now bring all of this into the present day, because Guardiola's City are the ultimate expression of possession control. Build slowly, move you side to side, wait for the crack, then punish. The way most teams lose to City is by panicking, pressing without structure, dropping without outlet, trying to match possession without the quality to sustain it. Ferguson's United didn't play that game. They created a different game. They accepted that the opponent can have the ball as long as you control the centre, the transitions, and the moments after the regain. And this is the exact junction where Michael Carrick enters the story, because in the derby, Carrick didn't choose the fashionable approach. He chose the Ferguson approach: compact control, calculated patience, and ruthless transition punishment. Pep Guardiola arrived at Old Trafford with a plan he has trusted for years: control the match by controlling the ball, keep Manchester United pinned, and wait for the one moment where structure turns into a clean chance. On paper, it is a familiar City blueprint. In practice, it depends on one critical condition: the opponent must chase the ball emotionally, pressing at the wrong times, opening central lanes, breaking their own shape, and gifting City the spaces they want. Michael Carrick refused to do that, and that single decision turned City's greatest strength, possession, into a problem they couldn't solve. United won 2-0, with Brian Mbeumo scoring in the 65th minute. and Patrick Dorg adding a second in the 76th, assisted by Bruno Fernandes and Matheus Cunha, respectively. But the scoreline is only the headline. The real story is how the match was built. City's attacking approach is designed to feel inevitable. The aim is not to rush you, the aim is to move you. Pull this opponent side to side with patient circulation. Fix the backline with wide dribblers and high fullbacks. Keep a central reference, Haaland, ready to attack the box as soon as the last pass arrives. Use the half spaces to create cutbacks, disguised through balls, or short combinations that open a shot window. This match followed that logic. City dominated possession at 68%, which is exactly the kind of game state Guardiola wants. And the key roles were clear. Doku held width on the left, stretching United's right side and hunting isolations. Semenyo was used on the right to isolate, carry, and create the 1v1 threat that drags defenders out of line. Haaland stayed central, waiting for the moment a cross, cutback, or slipped pass finally arrived. Normally, this is where opponents start to crack. They begin pressing one pass too late, one player too high, and suddenly City are running at a backline that is not set. Carrick's United did the opposite. They made City play in front of them and then punished them for committing bodies forward. The trap started with discipline. United defended in a compact structure that repeatedly closed the most valuable zones, the central corridor and the half spaces around the edge of the box. City could circulate wide and recycle possession, but United's line, spacing and midfield distances made it difficult to turn possession into clear shots. This is why the match statistics are so revealing. City had 68% possession, but United created the better opportunities. United finished with 11 shots to City's 7, and United put 7 on target. City had no shots on target in the second half, which is a huge indicator of how well United's block protected the danger zones when the game opened up. That is the first tactical victory. Carrick allowed possession but denied penetration. City were moving the ball, but they were not moving United. And when you can't move the block, you don't get the timing Guardiola teams rely on. You end up forcing actions, crosses from suboptimal areas, shots through traffic, speculative passes into crowded lanes. This is where Carrick's plan starts to resemble Ferguson's logic in modern clothing. United didn't press all the time. They pressed at the moments that suited them, moments that created the best platform for a transition. The triggers were situational, a pass into wide zones with limited forwards options, a receiver with a closed body shape unable to turn. Any moment, City's supporting distances stretched and the rest defense became vulnerable. Instead of chasing the ball, United hunted the next pass and the next touch. This matters because Guardiola's structure is designed to beat emotional pressing. It struggles more when an opponent is patient and chooses pressing moments with discipline. Carrick's United essentially said, "We won't fight you for the ball, we'll fight you for the mistake." Here's the harsh truth about Guardiola's system. To dominate, City commit numbers forward. Even when they protect against counters, they still leave space, especially in the channels and behind the advanced line. Carrick didn't just counter fast, he countered immediately, the Ferguson principle. The moment United won the ball, the first thought was vertical progression into space, not recycling into safety. And the evidence that it kept working is not subjective, it showed up repeatedly. United had 3 goals disallowed for offside, which tells you the same pattern was being accessed again and again. Runs in behind, early releases, and City's line being tested repeatedly. Offside goals are not bad luck in this context. They're a signal the plan is consistently breaking the defensive line. That's how transition football works when it's coached properly. You don't need one perfect counterattack. You need a repeatable method that keeps producing the same type of moment until one finally counts. And in this derby, one did. The opening goal in the 65th minute wasn't just a nice move. It was the tactical thesis of Carrick's game plan. It came from a moment where United regained or cleared and then attacked the space City had left. The sequence was a classic counter-attack, with Bruno Fernandes central to initiating the break and Mbeumo finishing the move. This is why it hurt City. They were set to dominate territory, but the moment they lost control of the ball, they had to defend a sprint situation, exactly the type of defending Guardiola teams try to avoid. And the psychological effect is massive. Once City realize the counter is real, they hesitate. And once they hesitate, their possession loses its edge. The second goal in the 76th minute matters because it shows Carrick wasn't simply sitting in a block hoping for one break. United scored again through Dorgu, assisted by Kuna, a key detail because it speaks to Carrick's willingness to use game state and personnel to sharpen the transition threat. This is where modern structure meets old principles. Old principle: attack quickly when the opponent is open. Modern structure: use substitutions and spacing to keep that transition threat alive for 90 minutes. When that second goal went in, the game effectively confirmed the trap. City had more of the ball, but United had the more dangerous reality. If someone missed the entire match and you wanted to summarize why Guardiola lost, you could do it with 4 numbers. Possession, City 68%. Shots, United 11, City 7. Expected goals, United 2.03, City 0.45. Second half shots on target, City 0. Those figures describe a specific type of victory. United created better chances from better moments while denying City the quality that possession is supposed to generate. That is not luck. That is planning. Guardiola can change structures in-game, but the fundamental issue here wasn't just tactical, it was structural. To fix what was happening, City would have needed to do at least one of the following: reduce their commitment forward, which dulls their attack, or keep more security behind the ball, which limits their ability to overload, or increase directness, which moves them away from their preferred control rhythm. Carrick essentially forced City into a dilemma. If you attack the way you normally attack, you expose yourself. If you protect yourself, you lose your cutting edge. That's the mark of a well-built trap. Whatever the opponent chooses, they sacrifice something they need. Tactical systems live and die on execution. This wasn't only about shape, it was about players doing the hard things well. Bruno Fernandes as the transition brain, first pass, first decision. Mbeumo as the decisive runner and finisher in the key moment. The defensive unit holding its nerve through City's possession. And the chaos element that always exists in derbies, big tackles, big moments was present too, including a major talking point around a challenge on Doku. But the headline remains: City didn't lose because they weren't City. They lost because Carrick made being City less valuable than it usually is. So that's Pep's plan, and the trap Carrick built around it. City had the ball. United had the spaces City didn't want to defend. City had structure. United had structure and speed. City wanted control through possession. United controlled the moments that matter. Now we go one level deeper, because the most important part of this derby wasn't just that United counter-attacked. It's how Carrick engineered those counters, the exact pressing cues, the spacing of the block, and why City's right and left-sided threats kept running into the same wall. At this point, the comparison can no longer stay implicit. What Michael Carrick deployed against Manchester City was not just smart counter-attacking football. It was a modernised version of the Sir Alex Ferguson transition machine, updated for today's Premier League, but rooted in the same brutal logic that once broke the league's best teams year after year. And here's the critical shift. This approach isn't only dangerous for Guardiola, it is uniquely uncomfortable for every elite Premier League coach whose system relies on control, structure, and territorial dominance. That includes Mikel Arteta, Liam Rosenior, Arne Slot, Unai Emery, and of course Pep Guardiola. Because the common thread in their football is this: they need the opponent to play the game with them. Carrick refused. Under Ferguson, Manchester United were at their most lethal when opponents felt on top of the game. Possession tilted one way, territory tilted one way, and then one turnover, one vertical pass, one sprint, and the match flipped. Carrick's version uses the same logic, but with modern spacing and rest defense awareness. The similarities are striking: compact mid-block, denying central access. Patience without passivity. United do not press emotionally. Explosive first action after regain. Immediate depth runners, not recycling midfielders. Numbers committed forward in transition, but only after the ball is secured. This is exactly how Ferguson's best United teams hurt possession-heavy sides, not by trying to dominate the ball, but by weaponizing the opponent's attacking shape. The difference now is that Carrick is applying this to a league where most top coaches play proactive, high-commitment football. That's why this system scales so well. This is where the comparison becomes unavoidable. Ferguson didn't just coach systems, he coached belief in the system. Players trusted that if they held their nerve, the moment would come. Carrick's United showed the same trust. They didn't panic during City's possession spells, they didn't abandon shape after missed chances, and they kept attacking the same space until the breakthrough arrived. That mental consistency is the hardest thing to build, and it's the reason Ferguson won 13 Premier League titles, 528 league games, and dominated across 3 different decades. Carrick is clearly tapping into that psychological lineage. Here is the uncomfortable truth for Premier League coaches. Most elite teams now play high-risk, high-commitment football. Most elite teams now rely on territorial control. Most elite teams now assume the opponent will either press poorly or sit too deep. Carrick's system sits in the blind spot. It doesn't overpress. It doesn't retreat into fear. It waits, then it attacks decisively. That is why this approach scales against Guardiola, frustrates Arteta, punishes Slot's high lines, disrupts Emery's structure, and exposes any team that needs time to organise after losing the ball. Ferguson built an empire on that truth. Carrick is adapting it to a modern league full of coaches who believe control is safety. This is not nostalgia. This is not a throwback for the sake of it. This is a proven Manchester United weapon, refined, modernised, and deployed at the exact moment the Premier League is most vulnerable to it. And the final question now becomes unavoidable. Is this just a one-off masterclass, or the beginning of a Manchester United identity that top Premier League coaches will start planning around? At this point, the picture is clear. What Michael Carrick showed against Manchester City was not a tactical stunt or a one-night ambush. It was a statement of identity, one that reaches backward into Manchester United's most successful era and forward into the realities of the modern Premier League. Carrick did not try to reinvent football. He chose something far more difficult. He chose, this is the Ferguson inheritance in its purest form. Trust the process, trust the moment will come, and when it does, be ruthless. That mentality is what separates counter-attacking teams that survive from those that actually win. There's always a lazy criticism when teams refuse possession. Negative, reactive, old-fashioned. But Carrick's United were not passive, they were selective. This is modern football intelligence. It recognises that dominating every phase is unrealistic. And the most important thing about this match is not the scoreline, it's the recognition. So the real question isn't whether Michael Carrick outthought Pep Guardiola on one night. The real question is this: have Manchester United finally found a football identity that fits both their history and the modern Premier League? Because if this transition-based, disciplined, ruthless version of United becomes consistent, then the rest of the league won't just be analysing it, they'll be planning around it. And that's when you know a system is dangerous.